At the same time, the myth of Plumed Serpent spread amongst the Teotihuacanos of central Mexico. It also circulated amongst the Maya regions of the Yucatan, Belize, and Guatemala. Functional and geographic differences among these populations created minor differences in their related myths and customs, yet they remain fundamentally similar. Central Mexico, land of the Teotihuacanos, is a dry, almost arid desert land of valleys and mountains, while the land of the Maya to the east, south, and northern Yucatan Peninsula is a somewhat flat, humid, rainy jungle. Scientists confirm that the meteor that arrived 60 million years ago, ending the reign of the dinosaurs, landed in the Yucatan Peninsula, creating the Chicxulub crater and leaving a singular underground water system snaking beneath the surface of most of the Maya region. Limestone pillars today support much of this area's landmass, dotted here and there along its surface with sinkholes known as cenotes, reaching hundreds of feet down into the deep, watery abyss. Thus, central Mexico's weather and landscape may have contributed to an overall harsher experience of the Plumed Serpent myth than the Maya's more fluid, water-endowed existence. 15,000 years ago, the first sign of two unrelated groups of peoples in the Americas appeared. One, it is suggested, originated in Asia and crossed a land bridge to the Americas. The other was of Eurasian background and arrived to America by unknown means. It is thought that these latter immigrants emigrated northward from South America into Guatemala, forming the first Maya cities of Tikal, Copan, and Palenque. When these cities fell, the remaining peoples traveled further north, forming the later Maya cities of Uxmal, Ekbalam, Chichen-Itza, and Tulum. Another major difference between the Maya and other cultures of central Mexico can be found in language. The Maya language derives from the Itza people rather than the Aztec, which may have been one of the reasons why the Maya code was so hard to decipher. Maya-written glyphs are a combination of logograms, a sign that represents a word, and syllabograms, a sign that represents a syllable or phonetic sound. Any given word can be expressed as a lone logogram, as for the word jaguar, or as a combination of syllabograms, also meaning jaguar. Sentences are composed of both of these types of glyphs. This stands in contrast to phonographic languages, such as Spanish or English, where the letters are constant, and stringing them together creates phonetics and words. Sentences are comprised of strings of words, read top to bottom, left to right. A Maya sentence is also read from top to bottom, left to right. Yet the Maya glyphs are generally in pairs. In other words, you start at the top left, read two glyphs, then go down to the next pair. Often the glyphs are accompanied by a larger image, such as of kings, priests, or gods, as found in the remaining major Maya codexes, or texts. The glyphs elaborate on what the person in the image is doing. If arrangement or syntax of a sentence tells you anything about culture, then the Maya rewarded and recorded action, something congruent with how Carlos Castaneda lived, taught, and wrote. Acts have power, especially when the warrior acting knows that those acts are his last battle. There is a strange consuming happiness in acting with the full knowledge that whatever he is doing may very well be his last act on earth. Maya sentences are arranged verb-object-subject rather than subject-verb-object, intimating that what is done or accomplished is more important than who does it. A stela from Guatemala demonstrates this. Translated, the top line reads 2 December 780. The first and second glyphs of the second line read planted or inserted stone and scattered droplets. The third line states this is done by Yayaxjul, or Bak, who in the fourth line is described as the guardian of Bob and divine lord of Hokab. This is followed by a last line mentioning a sacred element, that this, quote, was witnessed by the divine lord of Mutul and by the 28 lords, end quote. Looking more deeply into the Maya glyphs reveals a mutability, multiplicity, and versatility of action and thought that is characteristic also of the lineage of Carlos Castaneda. Besides each written word having both a logo and a phonetic sound glyph, a single phonetic sound glyph with a single meaning could have multiple signs, as in the following example of Yayaksun Balam, which means jaguar. While others with multiple meanings could also have multiple signs, as in the example of Chan, standing for snake, for, or sky. With all this fluidity of language, one might ask, what determines the meaning of a glyph? The answer, the words around it. For a Maya scribe had the freedom to change, conflate, and rearrange glyphs accordingly, guided by space available, the effort to avoid repetition, and artistic expression. Why is understanding language important, you might ask? Because language influences perception. To fully immerse yourself into the Maya and their myth of the plumed serpent, it is helpful to momentarily suspend your mother tongue and jump, as much as possible, into theirs. From all that we know, the Maya world was a very mutable place. A strategic and artful spontaneity of adaptation to the ever-changing world seemed to be the rule. Mutability trumped predictability. Life was short and different each day, and one's ability to respond functionally, without hesitation or fuss, meant survival. Carlos Castaneda echoed these same thoughts in some of his final words about leading a conscious life. Free from idealities and pseudo-goals, man has only function as his guiding force. Shamans call this impeccability. Similar to the Quetzalcoatl stories of the civilizations of Tula and Teotihuacan of central Mexico, the Maya tell their own Genesis tale in their sacred book, the Popol Vuh, where the plumed serpent helps the mythical being, Heart of Sky, create the world. Now it still ripples. Now it still murmurs. Now it still sighs, and it is empty under the sky. Here follow the first words, the first eloquence. There is not yet one person, one animal, bird, fish, crab, tree, stone, hollow, canyon, meadow, forest. Only the sky alone is there. The face of the earth is not clear. Only the sea alone is pooled under all the sky. There is nothing whatever gathered together. It is still at rest. Not a single thing stirs. All alone, the maker, modeler, resplendent plumed serpent are in the water. Light glitters in the place where they stay, covered in quetzal feathers, in blue-green, thus the name, Plumed Serpent. They are great sages. They are great thinkers in their very being. And there is also the sacred one, Heart of Sky. He came to resplendent Plumed Serpent, here in the blackness in the early dawn. He spoke with resplendent Plumed Serpent. They agreed with each other. Resplendent Plumed Serpent asked, how should the sowing be, and the dawning? Who is to be the provider, nurturer? This water should be removed, emptied out, for the creation of the earth's own plate and platform. And then the earth arose because of them. On the back of a turtle it rose. It was simply their words that brought it forth. Earth, they said. Then the mountains were separated from the water. Instant groves of cypress and pine. And so the plumed serpent was pleased with this. For the Maya, the ceiba tree symbolizes their world tree or universe, and Plumed Serpent plays a most important part. The heavens, or branches of the ceiba tree, are divided into 13 layers and ruled by the sky god, a two-headed serpent, or plumed serpent. The earth, represented by the trunk of the ceiba, is considered the lowest level of heaven. Here life is carried out, and such gods as Mother Earth, the god of the hunt, and the maize god dwell. The underworld, or the roots of the giant ceiba, called Xibalba, or the underworld, have 9 layers and 9 lords of the night. The 9th and lowest region is ruled by Apuk, the god of death, who doles out the calamities that strike human beings upon earth. According to Maya myth, man travels these worlds during the course of his life. He begins in the heavens, the stars, descends, carried on the back of Plumed Serpent, to the underworld, to be birthed into life upon earth. At death, he travels, again with the help of Plumed Serpent, to the underworld to transform flesh into light, and then rises again to take his place amongst the stars. Hence, similar to the Teotihuacanos and Toltecs of central Mexico, the Maya conceived of a similar ideal, turning into radiant light at the end of their lives, and shared recognizable symbolic images of Plumed Serpent. At Xilxaltun, one of the oldest remaining Mayan sites in the North Yucatan, rests a chacmul slightly different from the rest. With edges more rounded than sharp, resting on its right side instead of on its back, and positioning its holder on its left hip rather than on its belly. This chacmul seems a far more delicate version than those found in central Mexico. Yet just as Teotihuacan was meticulously laid out on a grid offset 15.5 degrees from the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, the major structure at Xilxaltun, the Temple of the Seven Dolls, was built square east to greet the rising sun. And similar to the Avenue of the Dreamers at Teotihuacan, Xilxaltun's long unpaved avenue runs from the main structure. Here, every spring and autumn equinox, Maya assembled, bringing gifts to greet the divine sun shining through the structure's central door, intending a rich planting and harvest. At winter and summer solstices, they also assembled to greet the sun through the temple's side doors. Nearby, in the city of Uxmal, the temple of the magician stands high above the rest. As the pyramids at Teotihuacan were built and rebuilt with the passing of kings and political victories, so was this Maya temple renovated several times. The last renovation carries the story of a female sorcerer who, wanting a child, stole an egg, incubated it, and hatched a deformed male dwarf. Dwarves among the Maya were considered to have considerable power. The king grew jealous of the child's popularity and commanded him to build a pyramid in 24 hours or die. The child's sorcerer mother intervened and built the pyramid seen today well within the limited time. Close to this major temple rests a large open courtyard surrounded by 4 chambered structures called the Nunnery's Quadrangle. Along the top of each edifice runs an elaborate chiseled fretwork dotted with carvings of a water snake, a conflation of the rain god Chak, and the Plumed Serpent. Another myth of Plumed Serpent tells that he travels the heavens gathering rain, then plunges toward earth, diving into a cenote, bringing water from the sky up through the soil to nourish crops. The palace of the governor at Uxmal houses additional fretwork, this time commemorating the power and strength of the ruling class. In the center is a carved stone image of a ruler wearing a feathered headdress, a symbol that he reached into the ether for visions, quite possibly from Plumed Serpent. Traditionally, these headdresses were made of blue and green quetzal feathers, commemorating the color of Plumed Serpent's feathers and scales. Additionally, at the governor's palace sits the remains of a twin-headed jaguar throne, the seat of royalty and grantor of life and death. Jaguar, considered one of the most powerful animals of the area, as well as a guardian of the underworld, may have represented the king's ability to traverse both worlds, as well as to command life and death over his subjects and captives. At the nearby city of Ekbalam remains one of the most elaborate tomb facades in northern Yucatan, a perfectly preserved ornate frieze of a gigantic flower mountain mask sits to the left, with a doorway, a fanged maw, in the center. The giant maw is often considered a symbolic representation of the mouth of the underworld, or even the plumed serpent, through which one passes on their journey of transformation from life through death to the stars. The standing, garbed warrior with wings might be the king himself, indicating his protective service to his people or his death in battle, and the surrounding seated women may be members of his court or wives, assistants to his passage through the underworld. Chichen-Itza, considered today one of the wonders of the world, was also thought to be the jewel of the ancient Maya. It is here that the civilizations of central Mexico and Yucatan merged. Before the Toltec people of Tula arrived in Chichen-Itza, the plumed serpent was already a mythical figure in Mayan lore. As described, he was one of the creators of the Mayan world, a heavenly dragon or deity of the heavens, and a transporter of human souls. He was also fused with the Mayan rainmaker known as Chac. After the fall of Tula in 987 AD, King Quetzalcoatl reportedly traveled to Oaxaca and then quite possibly came to Chichen, where a renaissance of the city then began. Tulan-styled columns replaced walls at the Temple of the Warriors, along with Toltec-styled chacmuls. Undulating feathered serpents replaced flower mountain masks and merged with the Mayan plumed serpent, changing its name to Kukulkan. Around 1050 to 1300 AD, Chichen rebuilt its main temple, a four-sided pyramid dedicated to Kukulkan, called El Castillo. This pyramid, which stands 30 meters high, is an example of an actual solar or planting calendar referred to as the Hab. This calendar consists of a 365-day cycle comprised of 18 named months of 20 days each, plus 5 extra days at the end of the year. The Hab is represented in this pyramid by counting 91 steps from bottom to top, multiplied by the pyramid's 4 sides, plus an extra step to the top, amounting to 365 days in a Maya year. Inside this main pyramid is another Toltec Maya pyramid, which stands 20 meters high. It is said to have been built at the time King Quetzalcoatl came to Chichen. This one contains a stone throne in the form of a snarling jaguar, painted red, with eyes and spots of jade. Atop this throne rests a circular Toltec shield in turquoise mosaic, and in front of it stands a quintessential chacmul, like those found at Tula. Features within this smaller pyramid suggest that it represents a sacred ritual calendar called the Tzolk'in. It consists of the numbers 1 through 13 in combination with 20 day names and is the longest surviving part of the Maya calendar. Integration of both the Tzolk'in and Hab calendars produces the Maya calendar round, the most commonly used calendar in ancient Mesoamerica. Recently, an even older, smaller pyramid has been found deeper within, a 10-meter tall structure dating from 550 to 800 AD, before the arrival of the Toltecs. At spring equinox, Maya gathered to watch the shadow of Kukulkan descend the Castillo's north face as the sun moved overhead. It was then followed along its designated trail to a nearby cenote before plunging in headlong, bringing much-needed water and life to the people and land. Thousands of people still come to watch this same phenomenon today, for at Chichen, the myth of Plumed Serpent and reality merged. In earlier Maya times, when water was plenty, simpler bloodletting practices of the ruling class sufficed to propitiate the gods. However, the period of Toltec intervention at Chichen coincided with great drought, and more sacrifices to the gods were thought necessary to bring rain. Near the Castillo is a skull rack and the platform of eagles and jaguars dotted with symbols of felines eating human hearts, reminiscent of similar emblems at Tula. Additionally, Chichen's ball court sent many a winner or winning team to sacrifice to secure the highest gifts from their deities. After Chichen dissolved, no other large metropolis grew to significance in the region. Instead, 16 rival states came into being, each jealous of the power and lands of the others, and an era of wars ensued. Some of these cities showed murals of gods being bound as though captives, and one horrific scene shows a deity slinging the heads of two gods, while another plays a war drum. For the Maya at this time, chaos on earth evidently mirrored chaos in the ethereal realms. Few sites remain from this last period, and those that do are buried beneath centuries of Spanish colonial construction. However, one such site remains untouched, Tulum. Spectacularly placed on a cliff above the blue-green waters of the Caribbean, Tulum is surrounded by a defensive wall on 3 sides and the sea on its 4th. Its principal temple, a smaller version of Chichen-Itza's El Castillo, stands clearly defined, with Kukulkan heads at the bottom and rattletails atop either side of its door. The temple of the descending god, showing a man plunging headlong to earth, is another representation of Kukulkan, who showers gifts from the heavens to the earth below. And a temple of the frescoes, with still intact representations of Chak or Kukulkan as rain god, blesses the land with abundance. In short, Tulum offers a miniature Chichen, since trade and defense were its main concerns, rather than civilization building. In 1528, the Spanish arrived to the Yucatan, creating more havoc in the remaining Maya states. A Maya visionary taking the name Chalam Balam, or priest jaguar, wrote of these events and times, describing not the demise, but the scattering of his people. Eat, eat, thou hast bread. Drink, drink, thou hast water. On that day, dust possesses the earth. On that day, a blight is on the face of the earth. On that day, a cloud rises. On that day, a mountain rises. On that day, a strong man seizes the land. On that day, things fall to ruin. On that day, the tender leaf is destroyed. On that day, the dying eyes are closed. On that day, 3 signs are on the tree. On that day, 3 generations hang there. On that day, the battle flag is raised, and they are scattered afar in the forests. On that day, the battle flag is raised, and they are scattered afar in the forests.